how can I die before I die? Dream yoga, which is their kind of set of practices that include lucid dreaming, it is the practice they use to prepare for dying. We have grown up in a wake-centric culture that completely deprioritizes dreams as nonsense. 4 to 6 years of your life you'll spend dreaming. And in that space is this incredible opportunity to do a fast-track acceleration of personal integration, understanding, exploring the nature of reality, self-transcendence, and preparation for death. This is a pathway that requires no intermediary, no drugs, no priest, no shaman. This is you working with the power of your own subconscious, unconscious mind directly.
Mia Lux is a recovering lawyer turned lucid dream trainer. She blends modern psychology with Tibetan Buddhist wisdom to help people explore one of the most extraordinary states of consciousness, lucid dreaming.
Dreaming is like an incubator where you get to play with these different forces of self, mind, and consciousness. And the first time I did this, it had changed my life, because as you come through the sleep paralysis, you kind of end up in what I call like the dark, bright, interdimensional kind of space before there's a dream.
From the point of view of someone who's never really heard of lucid dreaming, can you just start us off with like, what the F is lucid dreaming?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mia, you and I have lived so many lifetimes together. I'm realizing this is our 10-year anniversary of friendship. We met in 2015 in Mexico. In Puerto Vallarta, you were emceeing Mind Valley's A-Fest. It was then called Awesomeness Fest. And we met in some of the like most luxurious, amazing, fun locations. You're the best MC I've ever seen. Smart, funny, like quick-witted, deep, its own transmission even while you're hosting, which is really
And I like to think I really captured the Emily Fletcher introduction with, this is the absolute sparkle of a woman.
Oh, I was about to say.
That became iconic.
My favorite way you've ever introduced me was like, Emily Fletcher, an absolute sparkle of a human. And I've never really felt more seen. It was you and Vision. I think it was like an online something. But I have been so fascinated to watch your evolution, because we don't just have a friendship on stage. Like, we were in this deep, intimate circle together, which I talk about a lot, of like a manifesting group of 8 women. And we were partners many times. So we would like share our big dreams with each other in the morning and then report back every night if we had manifested them or not. And at that point you were married. Can I talk about your ex-husband? Also, I want to credit you with the term "husband." I use it all the time. I love it. And Dr. Mark Hyman is your husband. And I think you guys did Ziva together. I'm just giving you the history of the depth of our friendship. And then you went through like a real awakening / like dark night of the soul / like pulling up trauma and shadow and medicine work. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that is where you discovered lucid dreaming. It's like in the depth of that. Is that correct?
Well, actually, lucid dreaming has been a practice I've been doing for 8 years. Oh. So it was many dark nights of the soul. It's a requirement for the good friction of this human being experience. But 8 years ago, I was able to get into the practice and really build it in, which was beautiful. So when I went through that really hard, cathartic moment, it was one of the most powerful tools for the integration of those traumatic memories and for that process. Yeah, so it really came into play as I think a showcase for myself around the relationship between PTSD, trauma, lucid dreaming, and integration around that time.
Integration of what? Like integration of all the tools together, or like integration
of dysfunctional psychological content. Right? So integration of whether you call it shadow elements or historical trauma, whatever it is that's in the psyche and in the system that has been compartmentalized or that's causing this kind of the spinning and the friction.
Oh, this is so good for me, because I think up until very recently, like just a few months ago, I kind of like to fancy myself as like not having a shadow. Like I really was like, oh, shadow work? Never tried it. Not interested.
How's that working out for you?
Well, honestly, pretty great. Like I've had a really great life, and like it's been very charmed and so good. But the thing is, like, if you don't ever look at your shadow, and especially the bigger the light gets, the bigger the influence, like the bigger the shadow gets. And so I've just got like a real humbling, walloping dose of it in the last few months. And as painful as it's been, as humbling as it's been, as like shame-inducing and embarrassing as it's been, I trust myself more now that I've like looked at it and felt it, and I'm like making my way through it. And I'm fascinated as to how lucid dreaming could help with that. But before we even like go into this, because you're one of the smartest like most researched, like most passionate people about lucid dreaming I've ever met. I think I want to just share, because you sent me a bunch of articles, and the thing that it felt relevant is just even giving people a framework is the movie Inception, because I think that that's kind of like given, like it like brought it a little window into the pop culture, a little window into the zeitgeist, that this idea that you could be in multiple states of consciousness simultaneously and then be aware of it, or that you could jump timelines or jump realities, but then they had the top, right? Like a spinning top.
Yeah, for sure.
And so when I first saw that movie, I remember thinking, like, I must find Christopher Nolan and I must interview him about his spiritual practice, because I was convinced that he was a deep student of the Vedas, that he had been studying like different states of consciousness and different lineages of time. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like it's Gyan Kand, Upasana Kand, and Karma Kand all in one movie. But then I heard that movie was actually born out of them doing drugs. It was like a bunch of people doing drugs, and they were like, here's a great idea, which I think a lot of the lineages, including the Vedas, it was people smoking whatever, sitting around in circles, having similar cognitions. But can you just, like, from the point of view of someone who's never really heard of lucid dreaming, maybe they've seen Inception, maybe they've remembered a dream or two, can you just start us off with, like, what the F is lucid dreaming?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting because Inception was one of those movies that I think popped the term into people's minds. And so people have an idea of like, lucid dreaming, Inception. But of course, there's a lot of fantastical elements to that movie. And so one of the cool things is inviting people into the exploration around like, well, how much of that is something you can actually do in your mind? Because a lot of it you can, right? Like a lot of that is not Hollywood sci-fi magic, that's real. So lucid dreaming, I think the best way to understand it is that it's not simply a psychological process. It's a unique, verifiable brain state. And so when you get lucid in a dream, it means that you know that you're dreaming as you were dreaming. And as you're listening to this, you're probably like, wait a second, I think I've had that experience. Like maybe in a nightmare, not sure if you remember, Emily, but if you can think back to a nightmare where it got bad enough and some part of your brain wanted to reject the dream. So it went, no, it's just a dream, it's just a dream, it's just a dream. And just before you wake up, you have this awareness, this isn't real, this is a dream, and then you pop yourself out because it's a nightmare. That's like a micro moment of lucidity. It's the recognition and the awareness that this very real three-dimensional reality that you are in, taking as waking state, you recognize that this is a dream. I am dreaming.
Okay.
When you do that, there's literally a part of your brain, the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, that pops online. It was dormant while you're sleeping. And it comes online and you see you have this hybrid, unique brain state, which is what it looks like when you're lucid dreaming. So it's important to know that it's not just kind of a special kind of vivid dream or even a precognitive dream. It's a state of awareness within the dream.
And it's trainable.
It's natural and it's trainable, right?
Okay,
so like
natural meaning that everyone has it?
Yeah, I mean, children lucid dream all the time. In fact, teenagers lucid dream all the time. They use it mostly for fun stuff like sex and flying, right? They're like, I'm dreaming, I can do whatever I want, wish fulfillment. But this is a natural pathway, which is why I'm so passionate about it, which can create more psychedelic than psychedelic experiences, right? This is a pathway that requires no intermediary, no drugs, no priest, no shaman. This is you working with the power of your own subconscious, unconscious mind directly.
I think that's a really important point, is that that any substance that you would take, any exogenous substance that you would take, only works because your brain has the natural receptors for it. So like if you inject LSD into the brain of a lizard, it doesn't actually trip because it doesn't have those receptors. So you can actually create these LSD-like experiences without LSD.
And if you get lucid in a dream and you take psychedelics in the dream, you will have the full-on psychedelic experience, just for context.
Now, would you have had to have done LSD, for example, to have a memory of what that's like?
That's a great question.
Or done MDMA?
That's a great question. That I can't answer.
Okay.
Because everyone I know who's done this has taken
has also done.
So you could say maybe it's the recollection, which, by the way, I mean, you're right. The subconscious, the unconscious is storing every detail of our experiences. So its capacity to replicate it is wild. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I find so fascinating about this. And I'd like to hear your interpretation of, I'm just making this up on the spot, but that like the conscious mind would truly be like the tip of the iceberg, and that the subconscious mind, or the part of the mind that is not the cognitive left brain, prefrontal cortex, is infinitely larger than the conscious mind. Like, do you think that the iceberg analogy is accurate, or is it bigger than that?
I think the most humbling thing one of the most humbling things about the lucid dreaming practices, the dream yoga practices, is that, right now in waking state, we have a very solid, consistent sense of self. My self structure is like, my name is Mia Lux. I train people in lucid dreaming. I live in Costa Rica. I have a really strong, consistent sense of who I am, right? And the waking state self structure doesn't like to not be part of other conscious experiences. And if it does, it dismisses them.
Wait, say it again. The waking state does not like to be part of other
if
conscious
it's not part of it, like if you take psychedelics, often the kind of cool ego, it's an easy way to, the ego will resist the dissolution of its experience because it can't remember or access that. And it's the same.
I can't remember or access what?
The psychedelic experiences, a lot of them. So if
once I do it, I take the psychedelics, I have an experience, and then I can't get there again. If you have like a big dissolution experience, the ego kind of comes back and often goes, oh, well, I was just taking psychedelics. It doesn't really count. There's a whole lot of like dismissive behaviors we have when we do these kinds of like ego breaking activities. And it's the same with the dreaming realm because the conscious waking mind doesn't have as much control when you're in the dream. It often wakes up and likes to dismiss out of hand the whole dreaming structure. Yes. Just a dream. Just a trip.
Just a dream. Mm-hmm. But when you get lucid in a dream, you as the conscious mind are right there. So like you, as you are experiencing yourself right now, are in the dream. So all your memories, you know who you are. You can be,
like the ego's there.
Fully there. And you're like, I'm in a dream. And I know it must be about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm sleeping in New York. I just went up and got to the bathroom. So you have all of your memories and you feel fully present. But now you're in this like high definition virtual reality simulator of your own mind. And the very first realization is, whoa, I am a subpart of this. Not that this is the subpart of me, but this incredible subconscious and unconscious mind system is the greater repertoire of my consciousness. And it's a very humbling thing for the waking state ego to realize because we like to think we're the big shot.
We like to think we're in charge. We like to think
we're in charge, that if there's anything that exists kind of outside of us, that it's kind of under us. Not that we are
subconscious. Yes, I'm the dom, you're the sub.
Unconscious. Totally, right? And
versus like super consciousness.
This is a super consciousness or
meta consciousness.
Exactly. And so it's like the thing of like the brain is the most important organ in the body according to the brain. Waking state conscious thinks it's the most important kind of consciousness according to it.
Do you think that is patriarchy and colonialism to some degree?
I'd say it's probably born the other way around. I think this is the universal habit of mind that has dominated humanity for a long time. I'd say patriarchy and these kinds of colonial attitudes are born from that habit of mind. They're like even more crunchy representatives of this kind of awake-centric approach and attitude that we've been cultivating for the last few thousand years.
Because I guess the question I'm asking, because I've never experienced this, of like if you were in like indigenous culture and you had a group of elders that had been dancing in the subconscious mind and had been recognizing the smallness, that sounds pejorative, but just I guess the proportionality of waking state consciousness to the super consciousness, if that was the MO, if that was the reality that
you would relate so differently to
would we still think that the mind was superior? Would we still think that humans are superior? Would we still think that, like this sort of human superiority over animals or white superiority over other races or males, like any of the other hierarchies that exist, would those go away if the whole perception of consciousness was flipped on its head?
I think it's a really great question. I think there's definitely a relationship because it's a flavor of thinking. Right? Like this hierarchical thinking is a flavor of thinking. And if you look at the indigenous cultures who have practiced not just lucid dreaming, although you'll find that in most wisdom traditions, but they're incredibly open, respectful relationship with the dreaming world. For many indigenous cultures, like the Toltecs or the Australian Aboriginals or the Siberian shaman, I mean, you literally look across the board, they treat the dreaming state as an important and equal experience of consciousness. For some, it's even more important. They believe that if something happens in the dream state first before waking state. So then they are existing this more open, mystery-based way of relating. And then if you look at how those cultures lived and related, I agree, there was like a different approach to hierarchy.
Right, like the relationship to spirit, the relationship to animals, the relationship to plants, like all of that would be more respectful because you're seeing that spirit in all of it, because like you're connecting with spirit through the subconscious mind.
I think, we've fallen into a time where the habit of mind, like the vast majority of how we as Westerns relate to quote unquote reality is with an incredibly myopic and wake-centric and reified perspective. We go, what I see with my eyes, what I can touch with my hand, what I can taste with my mouth is real. And anything that I can't observe through those concrete, gross body level senses is not real. So we've kind of collapsed into this very particular way of thinking.
Reductionist, isn't that called reductionist?
It's very reductionist, yeah, and very materialist, right? It's working just at the gross level, whereas the dream realm is a continuation of our experience of mind, but into the subtle levels. So the thoughts, like when you're working with meditation and you see these kind of compulsive thoughts popping up, okay, if you're not tracking, those are the thoughts that just become non-lucid dreams at night. It's the same thing. It's not like we swap into a different person. There's a continuation of our experience of mind, but the waking state parameter and the dreaming state parameters just look a little different, right? They have slightly different rules, and they each have different opportunities for growth. But in our world, most people don't even realize that, REM is 4 to 6 years of your life you'll spend dreaming. And in that space is this incredible opportunity to do a fast track acceleration of personal integration, understanding, exploring the nature of reality, self-transcendence, and preparation for death.
So I want to dive into how these practices have helped you in those realms of, personal development, preparation for death. But I just want to circle back to when you said, like, the thoughts happening during meditation, which in Ziva, thoughts during meditation are an indicator that the body is releasing stresses in the form of thoughts. And according to the Vedas and the lineage that I've studied, dreams are the same thing. I'm not lucid dreams, but I guess non-lucid dreams is just the body throwing off stresses. It's like body kind of metabolizing or releasing unprocessed things during the day. And so similarly to we don't analyze our thoughts during meditation, you also don't need to necessarily analyze the content of your dreams in a non-lucid way. But this is very different than lucid dreaming, where you're aware of the fact that you are dreaming and using it as like this VR simulation to do really whatever you want. So can you give us like a snapshot into one of the more wild experiences that you've had in lucid dreaming, and then what was the impact of that or the effect of that in your waking state and the rest of your life?
Yeah, I think when I first got into lucid dreaming, it was really through my own crippling fear of death. I think most of us, we have a fear of death, but we don't think about or honestly relate to it because it's horrifying.
Yeah, we just shove it right down.
So we don't deal with it until we have to, which is usually pretty late. For whatever reason, probably that's about 8 years ago, I woke up one day and I was like, how can I make a single meaningful decision about how I want to spend my life if I don't have a personal, deeply felt cosmology around what happens when we die? Because if I believe in the Christian kind of framework, that there's a heaven, there's a hell, you're a good boy, you're a good girl, you live one way. If I think we're just meat, we're just meat. You live a different way. If you think, there's a wheel of never-ending reincarnation and cause and effect is real, you live another way. And I got into this terror and paralysis where I couldn't sleep. I mean, it really took me down. And so the question I was trying to answer is, how can I die before I die? How can I have the personal, visceral experience? Not like that person's idea is cool, I read a book about it. Like, I wanted to feel it in my body-mind system. And the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which is mostly the wisdom lineage that I draw from, dream yoga, which is their kind of set of practices that include lucid dreaming. It goes far beyond it, but includes it. It is the practice they use to prepare for dying. So it's one of the more important practices if you want to wake up and be conscious, both as you die, but also in what they call the dream at the end of time, which is the death bardo. And so
Death bardo?
What's bardo? So the death bardo is when you die, the physical body dies. This is according to the Tibetan tradition. And then you go into a 49-day holding period where you essentially face the habit of your own mind. So this could be heaven, this could be hell. It depends on the quality and the habit of your own mind, right?
Yeah, I've heard that like the state of consciousness that you're in when you die very much impacts
proximate karma. Yeah.
What's it called?
Proximate karma. So it's the last set of thoughts and the state that you're in that then flavors the entire experience, which, by the way, is one of the things we use every night when we do lucid dreaming. The dream every night is literally a parallel experience to dying. That's why they use it for practice. The dissolution and the reconstruction of self. Dissolution, reconstruction, all the way from fully dualistic waking state all the way down to non-dual, non-dreaming sleep state, right? Deep sleep.
Well, yeah, I just want to highlight this because we were talking about this earlier, and I feel like this is an important point that in the dream, because reality is being created and destroyed quickly, that it can help you prepare for the impermanence of this dream, of this life, because ultimately it's all impermanent.
And so this is where it gets literally wild. So one of the practices that I took my training very seriously. So when I first started, because I was like, I need to die before I die. Really good motivation.
Which, by the way, is the theme from Eleusis. You know, I went on a priestess pilgrimage last summer to Eleusis, Greece, and that is why people would do the Eleusinian mysteries. It's why they would go, is to die before you die. And they would say, if you haven't gone to Eleusis, you haven't really lived, but you really lived because you learned how to die.
And same why people take like ayahuasca. I mean, the experience, the death and then revival experiences are very powerful for the mind. So with the dream yoga practices, there's something called a wake-induced lucid dream. And this is a practice where, again, these are all trainable skills, but the degree of commitment and ferocity you bring, that's why I call my company the Lucid Dream Dojo. You bring a degree of discipline and committedness to these practices. Courage and discipline are the factors. And the wake-induced lucid dream is where you learn how to stay conscious from the transition from waking into dream, so you never black out. So you do this sort of in the early morning when you're more likely to drop right into a REM cycle. And essentially what you do is you lie in bed and you use a series of meditation practices to calm the body, but to stay focused, but open focused.
And is it like Yoga Nidra or it's different? I know you said dream yoga, but Yoga Nidra is a totally different lineage. Okay.
I mean, Yoga Nidra is a supportive tool for dream yoga, but Yoga Nidra is a type of kind of non-sleep resting system, right? When you're lucid, you're working in the REM state. You're fast asleep. I just came out of the sleep lab in Chicago where I slept for 4 nights, hooked up to EEGs and monitors and getting lucid and sending the researchers signals so they can check like what happens in the brain when you get lucid.
Consciously sending them signals?
Yeah, so like I send them eye signals. So they'll see in the thing, she's in REM. You can see my brain state is in REM, which means I'm fast asleep. My body's paralyzed, right? I'm in sleep paralysis. I'm in REM, but I'm lucid, so I can send them eye signals because my eyes and my breath are not paralyzed. So when I get lucid, I go right, left, and it comes up on their eye monitor. Boop, 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 boop. Cool, she's lucid. I use my breath, sniffing, to let them know I'm about to begin a dream yoga practice so they can timestamp it. That's what these are the researching they're doing. And so the trick is with Wild is you essentially stay asleep as your body goes into sleep paralysis. So you go into sleep paralysis.
Stay asleep or stay awake?
Sorry, stay awake. You're staying conscious the whole way through. So you feel your body kind of going into sleep paralysis. There's often a lot of audio hallucinations and you can have some strong experiences as you're going through sleep paralysis. If you've trained, you practice, you focus. And the first time I did this, it had changed my life because as you come through the sleep paralysis, you kind of end up in what I call like the dark, bright, interdimensional kind of space before there's a dream.
How is it dark and bright at the same time?
It's like space, right? It's like a billion suns shining their light through darkness, but until there's an object, you can't see the light, but you can feel it. And so it's like being in this fertile space, disembodied, so no sense of physical body, but then you watch the dream begin to emerge. So it's a practice you can really strengthen. You kind of plant a dream seed. For me, it kind of comes towards me as a two-dimensional image, kind of starts to wrap around me, and at some point it congeals like into a three-dimensional reality and pop into a dream body. And the first time I had that where I was like, whoa, I moved from a really clear sense of being in my waking state body in bed through this kind of channel and then popped into a fully sensorial dream body in a completely new, bright, three-dimensional dream reality.
Okay, this is fascinating because I've never heard of that before. And it sounds like, because I don't know that many people have this skill of being lucid through what would be blackout sleep. Some people might have the ability to then wake up and go into lucid dreaming, which I've heard of before, but that feels very unique. And I just want to highlight that it felt like you were sort of like in the everythingness, in the amorphousness, like in space itself. And then from there, you popped into the dream body.
And you're watching a dream construct.
And is it your body?
I mean, often it's my body, but you can change it. The dream is completely fundamentally open. By habit of mind, it's usually my body, just because that's what I'm seeing during waking state, so my mind will replicate that. But the thing with that experience was that having a terrifying fear of death, not knowing how could there be like a sense of consciousness outside of this physical body, having that experience of moving through states from one sense of dimension into another completely softened that fear. For me, it was that experience of like, wow, like I just had the experience of moving from physical-based to non-physical-based consciousness, fully conscious, no drugs, like literally just working with the reality of consciousness and mind itself. And I woke up out of that dream and I was like, I no longer had that fear. I was like, I don't know exactly what happens, but the possibility that there was a continuation of mind became very real to me, and no longer in an abstract way.
What does continuation of mind mean?
Continuation of mind, when I feel into that, it's like what we talked about before in terms of bridging. So the state and habit of whatever it is that you've cultivated in your own mind, right? So this is whether it's the thinking, the space, the connection to awareness. When you go to sleep and you dream, you tend to have what the Tibetans would call samsaric dreams, which is what you're referring to, like psychological processing. And that usually tends to be a direct mirror of your habit of mind during the day. Like these things are completely connected and mirrored. And so when you die, the continuation is just of that same thing again. When you go into the death bardo, understanding that you're likely going to face a stronger version of that mind projected like you would in a dream.
There's like no escaping the trauma. There's no avoiding the pain. It's just whatever you didn't deal with is going to meet you there.
And the opportunity with lucid dreaming and with dream yoga is that, in waking state, it's so easy to just be so focused on what's outside of us, right? Like and to find ways to kind of placate our nervousness or our anxieties or our compulsive tendencies and really feel like, okay, it's cool. The dreaming realm will show us whatever is unprocessed and those neuroses in full form, and give us an immediate opportunity, if we get lucid, to immediately process and integrate them forever, right? So it's both kind of an amplifier, but a unique opportunity. If you think about lucidity as kind of like anything you can do in hypnosis, using like internal family systems, parts work, any of those kinds of modalities you can do in a lucid dream really directly. But it's literally you working with your subconscious mind and sometimes unconscious material too. And it's like there's a great quote, which is just the seeing is the doing. And that's the case with lucid dreaming.
What does that mean, the seeing?
If I summon a shadow, so like my first 18 months of training, I worked with like full-on shadow integration.
And what does that mean for you?
Getting lucid in a dream. So, wow, I'm in a dream. I recognize I'm dreaming. You learn stabilization techniques. So you learn how to stabilize the dream and stabilize your lucidity so you can stay in the dream for longer and longer. And then I'll summon something. I'll be like, okay, money shadow, come to me.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Let's hear it. I want to hear it.
Yeah, so this is an example of like an integration, like a lighthearted integration. Much darker ones, but this is a more lighthearted one. I noticed for myself that like how I use this as a practice to actually help my day-to-day life. When I notice there's something in my life that's a little out of balance, limiting beliefs or fears or blockages, I will think, okay, what could this be? Is there a name for this part of myself, or is it a shadow of something? I'll come up with what we call a dream mission, which is a clear directive of what I'm going to do in my next lucid dream, so I'm prepared. I come up with a sankalpa, which is like a clear statement of intention, so I know what to call out in the dream. So here I wanted to work with my money shadow. I was like, something's funky with my money stuff.
How was it showing up in your life? Like fear, scarcity?
Just kind of like working very hard for very little and thinking that's the way it has to be. I just noticed that I was, it was so hard for me to believe that you could make money pleasurably. Do you know what I mean? So, and I was like, intellectually, I've got so many great examples of people who make money pleasurably, but some part of me was like, I don't know if that's true for me.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me summon my money shadow and see what comes up. Again, the brilliant thing about working collaboratively with the dream, it knows you. It is you. It knows more about you than you remember about yourself. And so when I summoned my money shadow, I said, money shadow, come to me. And I turn around. It creates this representation. And the representation this time was like this humanoid lizard lady in like an accountant's outfit. And she was like really nervous with like dry skin and like her hair was all scraggly and she had little glasses. I said, are you my money shadow? She said, yes. I said, okay. I said, well, what do you believe about money? And she was like, oh, well, you have to work very hard. And the minute you leave your desk, you stop making money and all your hair falls out. I said to her, wow, that sounds really painful. I said, is there, what can I do to help you, break free of that? She's like, oh, I just don't think there's anything you can do. I said, okay, let's try this. I said, lie down and I'm going to do a meditation with you. And so she lay down on the floor and I summoned, remember this is a dream, right? You can do what you want. I summoned a golden orb of light, like an egg, and coated her in it. I said to the dream, meditation music, please. And started playing my favorite binaural beats track down to the beat, right? Like again, the unconscious, subconscious mind remembering everything. And I started pulsating this glowing, beautiful egg of light over this kind of lizard lady. And I was like, you have sufficiency. It's enough to receive. We can earn pleasurably. I started like sending all this like love and affirmation to her about like what's possible.
And are you saying we, because it's like she is you and you are her?
Yeah, like you can, and your language is flexible. It's about the heart feeling. So it's about the connectedness. And it started to pulse. And what happened was, I saw her transforming, and it kind of reached this peak, and she burst out of this egg, and she was this unbelievable, massive golden Chinese dragon. And she looked at me. She said, I'm no longer a money worm. I'm a wealth dragon. Wow. She flew off, and like I woke up out of a dream. And when you have a lucid dream like that, you wake up filled with energy, because it's like you've gone and reclaimed some aspect of your psyche that you have long pushed down. And it's like bringing that power back into your system, right? Bringing it back into like alignment. And it's one of the most energizing and like mind-blowing experiences. And then, symbolically, like knowing that each person like has their own inner language with their dreamer, you begin to map yourself so beautifully, because you're able essentially to build the symbolic relationship with your own mind and work with that during the daytime.
And did that dream change your relationship with money in your
100%,
life? Like
yeah.
From what to what? Can you give us like,
one of the reasons it was bigger than just numbers. The reason why I was afraid to do lucid dream teaching, even though I've been practicing for forever, and it was one of the most life-changing fundamental practices of my life. It's just something I did. I just had this feeling of like, there's no way I can do something I love that much and make money, which was connected to this. So just this feeling of like, if I ever wanted to teach something like lucid dreaming, I would never be able to make a living off it.
Because it's too pleasurable.
Because I'm not working hard. Because I love it. Because it's this incredibly expansive, open, beautiful experience. And my money worm was like, no, you gotta be doing the things you hate. So like even there, like just waking up out of that and having this sense of like openness and flexibility to be able to go out and build my business like I have. It's an amazing feeling.
So beautiful. I've been playing with the idea recently of, and you hear people talk about this, and I've understood it intellectually, but I'm really trying it on viscerally, of treating this world, this reality, as a video game. Helps with that. Or like, and I practice dying every day, twice a day, and I have been for 16 years. Like, it's one of the reasons I love Ziva so much, is because you do get to transcend the realm of thinking and transcend the realm of time. And when you do that, you do transcend the exclusive identification with your identity as all there is. And you do that twice a day for 16 years, and it starts to become this substantiation, right? That I'm no longer the illusion that I am just the wave. I know in my bones and my cells that I am the ocean and the wave.
And by the way, Ziva's practice, I was very avidly doing Ziva through the majority of the first part of my few years of training. And it was very supportive for lucid dreaming as a practice.
Okay, we'll talk about video game in a second. Yeah. So yeah, I was gonna ask, like, how does Ziva prepare you for, or maybe help neuroplasticity, or can you talk about, how is Ziva
meditation is a super important part of lucid dreaming. You have your nighttime practices, but just as important is your waking state practices, because the reason you don't recognize you're dreaming is because we walk around all day going, I am this person, this is real. Like we're just unthinkingly grasping onto what's in front of us.
We're cemented in that left brain.
There is no moment of like awareness, awakeness. So people who meditate tend to have more lucid dreams because they're doing what Ziva does, which is creating these incredible, almost like ego pattern interrupts, where you're able to access a different type of awareness, which just kind of delaminates you from the attentional system. So instead of just being this like particular ego focused on particular outcomes, you can realize there's a much greater sense of awareness that sits behind that. And so that, and Ziva creates that spaciousness, which is where like true lucidity arises, is from the connecting out into the greater awareness versus being so fused fused into our sense of self. So I find that doing Ziva, I was doing it twice a day as well, like the experience of just creating that twice a day it's like practicing lucidity to recognize the dream at night.
Yeah, that would make sense, because it's like you're introducing this transcendence or introducing this fourth state of consciousness into your day. And even practicing this transition of states of consciousness at all, I would imagine makes it easier to dance in between the two, or like to bring some of the consciousness into the super consciousness at night.
Yeah, and even just the practice of learning how to sit and be with things, right? So a lot of my clients, when they come to me, they're afraid to get lucid. Like some of my clients, they want to get lucid, but they're afraid if they get lucid, they're going to experience uncomfortable things, right? A lot of people do nightmare work in the lucid dreams because it's so effective for the treatment of nightmares. It's so effective for PTSD. But to be able to do that, you have to cultivate a strong enough capacity to sit with and observe things. So for instance, being able to work with a bit of focus like you do with the mantra and lovingly hold whatever comes up without grasping to it, reacting to it. So I think even just like the subtle equanimity that gets grooved in these sorts of practices empowers us when we go into the dream and we see, a nightmare figure arise, to be prepared to meet that with compassion so we can transform and integrate it instead of collapsing into fear and, again, like losing lucidity and reifying the nightmare figure and running away, right?
What's reifying mean?
Like just making solid, making real. So
real.
Making real. So if you're lucid in a dream and you're really lucid, I'll give you an example. I once got lucid in a dream where I was surrounded by 300 zombies. Zombies and skeletons were my absolute fear. I couldn't even like look at those little toy skeletons from Halloween. Like I had such a fear and aversion.
Like your whole life? Or just when the fear of death
No,
came?
my whole life. Just couldn't even like watch a comedy zombie movie. It was so horrifying to me. So naturally, when I started doing transformation of fear work in my dreams, a lot of what I had to work with were these horrifying representations of corpses. And one of those dreams is like 300 of them. And even though I knew I was in a dream and I was holding a lucid framework, it was a lot of scariness, because anyone who's had a lucid dream will know that when you're in the dream, it's not dreamy. A lucid dream has the same sense of solidity as waking state.
That's wild.
You can touch, taste, there's gravity. I mean, you have a body, you can... It's so hard to explain that it's almost hyper real. And so when you're in that state, even if you're aware and you're lucid, sometimes you will still experience some fear because you're still dealing with pretty gross visual phenomena. But I use what I call as an emergency compassion response. I get all my clients to develop one, which is some kind of practice, whether it's a word like love, or for me, it's the Ho'oponopono prayer. I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. I repeat that over and over. It brings your heart online. So as you're dealing with things that are scary, you fire up your compassion. You literally hug the zombies and you love them and you love them. And then what happens? These 300, I remember I was like, but I was like, I'm going to do this. So I held out my arms to them. I said, I'm sorry, forgive me. Thank you, I love you. I'm sorry, forgive me. Thank you, I love you. One of them came up to me, started biting my hand. I'm like, I'm sorry, forgive me. Thank you, I love you. And I was beaming love out to them. After like 10 seconds, they all burst out laughing like it was the biggest joke, transformed into normal looking people, laughing and hugging like they just pulled the biggest prank on me, and then all kind of walked off on their own way. And that's, again, like the liberation of facing a fear, of facing something that you're running from. It's such a powerful experience in terms of what it builds in your capacity to, in the daytime, when something hard, something uncomfortable, something scary comes up, you've been rewiring your brain to be like, I can lean into this with compassion and courage. I don't have to run. It's like a powerful retraining technique.
Wow. I mean, the implications of this. What do you think the zombies were representing?
That's a great question. Now that I'm a bit more experienced, one of my rules is when I get lucid, I'll always ask a figure, what do you represent? Because they will literally tell you. But back then I didn't have that. And it always surprises me. It really does. Like I was once chased down by a man with knives. I got lucid and he stabbed me through my hand. I'll never forget. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm sending him love. He calms down, he transforms. And I say, what do you represent? And he was like, I'm the part of you that when I feel overwhelmed, I just panic and attack. And I was like, wow, I really know that part of myself. Like there is that part of me where if I'm feeling overwhelmed by things, I will just take it all down. And so getting to actually meet and integrate these very particular aspects and parts of your own psyche is super interesting. Yeah.
It's so fascinating because I'm going through this waking state experience right now. I'm really like seeing and I guess like facing shadow parts of myself. And by that I mean like, oh, I'm a liar. Oh, I'm a thief. Oh, I betrayed someone that I really love and respect. And like I did that. And then even like I was denying it. Like I did it and then I denied it. Boldface. And like didn't even, like I'm just like fascinated by the layers of reality, because I would say it's not my habit. I don't think I dwell in those realms. I don't think it happens that often, but now I really don't know. I'm like, how many times have I just deceived myself? And how many times have I lied and then lied about it to myself? How many times have I betrayed someone and then lied about that to myself because I wasn't willing or didn't have the tools to see my own shadow? And I also find this term shadow work to be a little bit elusive, but someone said it to me really simply. It was like, yeah, like you can't see the shadow because it's behind you. Like you put it there for a reason. And so it's really important that we have tools or a therapist or IFS or friends or dream work that allows us to like turn around and see that stuff, because if we don't, then it starts running our lives. Like it starts to take the wheel of our lives. And so the thing I feel really proud of is like in facing these parts of myself that I'm embarrassed about, that I'm ashamed about, that I judge as unlovable, that I've actually been able to be like, okay, I did that. Like I did that and I'm still lovable. Like I did that and like little Emily still deserves love. And I have definitely been using IFS through this a lot, which is internal family systems, which is a type of therapy developed by Dick Schwartz. And I have an amazing therapist named David Coates who I've been working with. But I'm curious to know, because I know you've done IFS. I know you said you can use lucid dreaming to kind of execute or expedite IFS work. I asked two questions. One, do you have to have done IFS in your waking state in order to be able to implement it in your dream state? And two, could you give us an example of what IFS work would look like in lucid dreaming?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, one of the beautiful things about this practice is that you become your own kind of self-psychologist, right? You in partnership with the greater dreaming subconscious, unconscious mind. And so one of the reasons it's so hard to see the shadow from this perspective is, to your point, it's a shadow, it exists as a shadow because you rejected it. And I think it's important to realize that shadows aren't always bad. A lot of the shadow work I've done has been reintegrating things like my sacred storyteller or my innocent sexuality, or like all I said, like the wealth dragon. So a lot of the shadow elements were just whatever I was taught is not welcome here, because maybe it's too threatening, maybe it's shameful, whatever it is. But it's really important to understand there's no like, it's a subjective experience. And going and doing shadow work is essentially going and reclaiming and reloving all the corners of our mind to bring it back into the sense of like full integration, so that you as me as a being, as a person, can be more effective, more compassionate, more impactful in this experience.
Yeah, that's
right?
a really important point. The shadow doesn't necessarily mean quote unquote bad. Doesn't have to be lying or shame or betrayal. It could also be wealth. You know, but if your mom you thought that it wasn't okay to have money or pleasurable money or sex.
And even the dark, quote, dark shadows are so important, because if you think about it, you, Emily, are not a liar. There is a part of you that learned to lie to protect itself. You, Emily, are not some awful friend or betrayer. There's a part of you that learned to get something by behaving a certain way. And I think this is where we can kind of step and go, like if we're willing to be really honest about the ultimate emptiness of our personalities, right? I love my mentor, Andrew Holacek, who's an incredible sort of dream yoga author and teacher. He'll often use the analogy of the idea that our ego and our self-construct is like a whirlpool in the river. And it's formed by movement and contraction. Like the whirlpool exists as this like physically distinct aspect of a river, but at the center of the whirlpool is nothing. And we are like that as like self-structures. We are the contractive movement. And it's terrifying when you start to realize there's nothing at the center. But it's incredibly important, because you start to realize that, this whole way of experiencing this particular reality was constructed in layers over time we can look at through parts, or there's different ways to look at it. And so with a lucid dream, you can go, okay, cool. Some of these parts are really helpful. And some of these parts maybe need to be updated. It's like software that worked when I was 5, because maybe I grew up in a suboptimal environment and I learned that if I told the truth, I got hit. So I learned to lie, blah, 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 whatever the example is. So for instance, one of the aspects I integrated was around depression. I noticed that I'd had a few depressive episodes in my life. Some of them were psychological based, some of them were physiological. But I did an enormous amount of work creating a great base level. But I noticed I still had these kinds of inexplicable depressive dips. In one of my lucid dreams, I went in and there was this incredible dream figure. She was this beautiful woman. She was only wearing black lingerie, and her entire body was covered in tattoos of bright red roses with thick black thorny vines. And then all over her body, she had these patches of scars, maybe where she'd cut herself. And she was beautiful, compelling, tragic looking figure. And so I went up to her and I said, what do you represent? And she says, I represent the part of you that collapses into depression anytime you feel like you can't handle something. And I was like, why do I do that? She's like, well, because then if you're depressed, no one can expect anything of you and you can't fail. I was like, huh. And I wrapped her in my arms and I loved her, and she dissolved into light into my body, and I woke up. And I woke up not just with the awareness of wow, that was a pattern I didn't even see in my life. It was this part of me that was protecting me from failing by giving me a good excuse, which is being depressed. But after that, I never had that experience again. So that direct integration did the healing, right?
Wow.
And that's the power of these practices. It's not just oh, cool, I have an idea now and I'll keep an eye out for that. The integration happens simultaneously and fully in the moment.
Whoa. Yeah. I mean, this feels very tantric to me.
It is. I mean, listen, dream yoga comes from the Vajrayana and Dzogchen traditions. This is the completion practices. It is a tantric practice.
Yeah, which my sort of simple definition of tantra is finding God where you thought that it was not.
That's really cool.
It's finding God in the part of you that collapsed into depression so that no one would expect anything from you, that's God too.
And you start to develop so much compassion even for the nightmare figures.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the figures that I faced, when they first appear, they seem so disturbed or disgusting. We have the impulse to run, but then to see, like you said, to see God and yourself in them, to show them that love and to watch the transformation. To give you some context with lucid dreaming, one of the really cool things that we're finding is that the neural correlates when you are lucid dreaming are identical to waking states. If you play tennis in a lucid dream, it's not like you're playing tennis. Your brain is playing tennis, down to the micro signals to the muscles, right? So your brain does not distinguish between a lucid dream and a waking state experience. You are regrooving and laying neural pathways with the same strength. Some argue maybe more.
Well, I've heard that in manifestation as well. If you can get yourself into altered states when you're manifesting, and this is not in sleep, but in waking state, you're playing piano in your manifestation, in your visualization, same, muscles are twitching, signals are going, but I'm curious what the similarities are there.
It's just stronger, right? So because your body has gone into a muscle paralysis, your brain is at full blaring experience. It's helpful to think about the fact that we're always dreaming. We're always dreaming. In waking state and in REM, the brain waves are almost indistinguishable. It's just that when we're in waking state, we're dreaming within the confines of sensory input. So like Donald Hoffman, like simulator theory and video games, Donald Hoffman has that great idea that, okay, we're definitely not seeing reality. There's something that we're rendering, but we're rendering it. There's some sensory input that our headset is interacting with and rendering. You are a human, you have a similar headset, we can look at the same thing and have a similar experience. But whatever ultimate reality is, it's not that. This is just our subjective interpretation of it. Sensory input is guiding it. When we're in the sleeping REM dream, we have no confines of sensory input. We're having the same kind of experience as waking state, but there's nothing restricting what we're dreaming of. So we're now in this incredibly flexible world where we can create anything we want. Mm-hmm. But we're always kind of dreaming. And so then it goes, wow, if we're experiencing such similarities, but in dreaming state, we now have this flexibility to completely change reality around us, completely change our bodies, work intentionally with the things we're most afraid of, and it's going to groove it at the same level as if we're doing it when we're awake, the possibilities for healing, integration, and growth are literally limitless.
Yeah, that's the word that kept coming in, is limitless. And also it feels like advanced and very fast form of manifestation. Because really, like, the way that I teach manifestation is that it's not about the thing, right? Because the happiness will never come from the thing. It's always the feeling that we assume the thing will bring. And so what we do at Ziva, and what we do in Ziva Magic, is inviting people to merge with future them. Like, what's the version of you that already has that thing? And what is the evolution necessary for you to become that thing? And so it sounds like what's happening inside of this dream state is a very fast version of, like, oh, I can manipulate reality, or reality is manipulating me, but understanding that it is malleable, I think, is a key component to manifestation.
And then to manifestation's point, I think there's two ways that lucid dreaming works very specifically with it. One is like actually getting rid of the blocks. A lot of people who struggle with manifestation, like, they've just got some unconscious stuff that's in the way. And like with lucid dreaming, because you're able to go in there and you can literally say, like, I summon my fear of being visible, or I summon my doubt of manifesting, and you can just directly work with it. So that's amazing. But another way is, in the dream yoga practices, we would call this kind of like stage 5, essentially kind of deity practice, generation stage, which is, if you were a Tibetan Buddhist, you would go in and you would summon a deity like Avalokiteshvara, or you would arise as Avalokiteshvara. Either way, what you're doing,
that?
It's the Buddha of compassion. So whatever kind of deity figure you work with. But as a Westerner, you could do like my higher self or Jesus or whatever figure embodies the values of what you're moving towards. Summon them in a dream and then merge with them. And then you're having this visceral body, neural experience of inhabiting that future self and like collapsing that timeline. I'll give you the craziest example. It's just happened to me. It's a small one, but it like blew me away again. I have always wanted to sing, but I've always been like, I can't sing. Like, every time I sing, I try sing, I'm like, I just can't. And it's always been like, I sing a little bit to myself here and there, but I've been practicing some chanting and doing chanting in the dream. And I had this lucid dream a couple of weeks ago where I went and sat in a monastery and I just started to chant and to sing. And in the dream, there's no restriction. I sing like Adele in a dream, right? And so I am singing and my whole body is vibrating and I'm like echoing through to the point where like the local monk was like, you're singing with your whole body, lovely, thank you. But I just having this feeling of like ecstatic feeling of like what it feels to sing uninhibited with the body. Anyway, woke up, whatever, making my coffee, and I just started singing some Disney song. And I sung it, and then Emily, I stopped and I was like, I just sung that like a real, like I was like, what just happened? And I sung it again, and like, I hit every note, and I had this quality. And so of course what I did is I grabbed my phone, I was like, I'm going to record this, and it all shut down. And then I couldn't sing again. And I was like, So what it taught me was like, again, we can, I think, access and unlock different states of embodiment in the dream that translate to waking state, and then watch in real time as our own neurosis shuts it down. But imagine for manifesting. Imagine if there's something you want to practice. If you want to learn how to give the most epic talk, you can literally go into a lucid dream and summon 10,000 people and get up on stage and deliver that with your whole heart. And your brain's going to be like, you nailed that. Remember that time you spoke to 10,000 people and you rocked it?
Yeah.
So you're able to build and have these experiences, I think, which translate naturally through the habit into your waking state.
I had a friend who taught himself to lucid dream, or maybe a friend taught him when he was little. And it was back when I was living in LA and acting, and he was a director. He's a film director. And he would do this. Anytime he was directing a film, he would go lucid. He would direct the film in his dreams, the whole thing, start to finish, so that when he got on set, it was not his first time doing it. And he already had the body memory. And I'm feeling, now I want to do this with Egypt. He's got this big dream of doing the Egypt activation. And there's a big piece of me that's afraid of it. How am I going to get there? Doing sexual practices in a Muslim country, the logistics, who's funding, like all the story of a million reasons why this is a terrible idea. But it's like, but if my body has that memory, my resistance,
The confidence.
yeah, it's like it's already done. Okay, so we gotta. Why isn't everyone doing this? And why isn't everyone lucid dreaming? And I'll tell you my fear. Tell you why I'm not lucid dreaming. is that I'm just terrified of not sleeping. Like, I feel like as a mom of a 6-year-old and a CEO of a company, like, my sleep is so precious. I've finally gotten my sleep hygiene good. Like, I'm finally like very disciplined about sleep. I'm getting like a good 7-8 hours. I feel how good I feel when I sleep. And I'm like, okay, this is great. I want to integrate my shadows. I want to go to Egypt and do these things. And right now I feel scared of being tired. I don't want to wake up at 3 a.m. I don't want to do the stuff that it takes. So I was like, that's my reason, but you might see a bigger reason than that.
That's a reasonable reason, right? Like, for a lot of people, they approach this and they instinctively think, oh gosh, if I'm conscious of my dreams, that's going to be exhausting, right? They have this assumption that it's going to be like that.
Like insomnia.
Right. But I think it's important to note that while there are some training practices that require sleep disruption for people who are doing it really hardcore, you don't need to do that to become lucid. And the vast majority of my practice involves no sleep disruption because I also love sleeping. And the way that I teach my clients is to work with their natural wake-up periods to get lucid versus doing like the classic, what we call a wake back to bed, where you set an alarm and get up and practice. So for instance, when I was in the Northwestern University at the Lucid Dreaming Sleep Lab last week, we were definitely using wake back to bed because I'm trying my best to give as much chance to get lucid as possible. But in my normal home practice, I won't use that. And what's important to note is that when you're in the dream itself, and so if you get lucid like most people do, which is a dream-induced lucid dream, so you haven't done any of the disruptive stuff, you're not trying to stay awake through the dissolution.
A dream-induced lucid
dream.
Yeah,
so you're already in the dream, you're fast asleep, you're dreaming, and then within the dream, something clues you in, you're like, wait a second, I don't live in Japan. What am I doing? This is a dream. So you have the realization while you're already dreaming. Mm-hmm. So there's no sleep disruption. But now, because you're fully lucid in this dream state, you can work at a higher level of like awareness in the dream, which means you wake up feeling so alive and so juiced up. Like, it's an incredible experience.
Okay.
But you've done nothing to disrupt your sleep cycle.
Okay.
Because your REM is already going.
You're
right?
selling me.
Yeah. So it doesn't require that. I would also say, though, my experience with students where they're training, because you can train casually with lucid dreaming. If you're like, you know what, I just want to have the experience of flying. I want to kind of play around with the dream a little bit. Like, you can just have a really casual experience of lucid dreaming, which is still really powerful, right? And there is a pathway, like, this is the way that my life's taking me. This is the way I tend to train my students, is in more kind of committed pathways towards self-integration and to self-transcendence. And when you do that, you do kind of tend to see your night practice not just as something that serves your waking state in the sense of like, oh, well, I sleep so I can have a good waking state. We start to appreciate that the dream is offering us such a powerful, unique opportunity to transform that committing one night a week to having a dream date, I call it a dream date, where you set up a beautiful area in your house with like candles to go meditate, and you get up for half an hour in this like sacred time of the night to connect with the dreaming mind and then go back into the sleep to do profound work. Once you had those experiences, like, putting that time aside feels important, not just like a pain in the ass, but like sacred. It's ceremony. It's like, and so I think that's when you begin to train, and there is a kind of slight reconfiguration in priorities, because you don't just think of the only thing that's important is how we're faring in waking state. We start to be intentional and diligent about how we're approaching the sleeping and dreaming state too.
Okay, so besides fear of sleep and being tired, is there another reason why everyone is not lucid dreaming?
Here's why people aren't lucid dreaming. What did you grow up believing about dreams? Like, did you wake up and your mother was like, Emily, how was your night of dreaming? What did you learn about yourself? What did you experience? Family, let's come sit together and let's talk about our dreams together. Let's reflect. And then before you go to sleep, okay, everybody, remember what you learned last night? Let's go back into another night of dreaming. No. We woke up with like, dreams. You have a bad dream. They're like, it's just a dream. Don't worry about it. It's nonsense. It's just processing. We have grown up in a wake-centric culture that completely deprioritizes dreams as nonsense. You see dream in something, you're like, some silly, waffly, woo-woo nonsense, right?
Yeah.
So we have a really bad attitude towards dreaming in the last few thousand years. And I think, there's been a big cultural shift, because it wasn't always so, right? Even like the ancient Greeks had such a respect, appreciation, and practice with dreaming. So I think we just grew up in a kind of a particular time and place that has really just shut that down on us. That's one piece. And then the other piece is just the habit of mind. Lucidity is natural and spontaneous. And the reason why children and teenagers tend to have it more, they have some, more REM, and they've got better sort of support in their sleep systems, but ultimately it's like they haven't crushed themselves in their way of relating to reality. We train our minds every single day in non-lucidity. Like, you're either practicing lucidity or non-lucidity. If you know where you are moment to moment to moment, like if you're really aware of like what's happening in your mind, really open and appreciating the whatever reality state you find yourself in, that's lucidity.
Like I would call that like mindfulness is a way to practice lucidity.
For sure. So mindfulness is a way, like when we do the day practice for this would be, the Tibetan culture, it would be what they call like illusory form practice, where you make a real concerted effort moment to moment to appreciate that, you are in a dream, that reality is dreamlike, and that you are really aware of that moment to moment to moment. And then, of course, at nighttime, you have the same experience. So we're just not lucid during the day. We have a habit of mind of just not even thinking about it, not even questioning it. And so, of course, you're dreaming and suddenly you're in a spaceship and there's an elephant, but you have no critical reflection. You're just like, okay, because that's what you do all day. Okay, I'm here. And you never question, where is here? So back to Inception, the spinning top, right? That was his version of what we call state check. That one doesn't actually work because that's not how it works, but there are some real state checks you can do. So for instance, when you're dreaming, your left hemisphere of your brain goes pretty dormant. So pattern recognition, that's why text is blurry, detail becomes difficult for the brain to render. So during the daytime, one of the practices is to cultivate this mindfulness. And when you're in this moment of like, okay, this is where I am. Which state am I currently in? You do a reality check. The one I like to use is with my hands. You literally you put your hands out and you look at them and pick like a very specific detail, a wrinkle, a spot. You look at it carefully, you flip your hands over and you flip them back and spot the difference. Did anything change? No, try again. And if nothing changes, chances are you're in a waking state. If you did this in a dream, your brain isn't able to replicate that degree of detail so quickly. So you'll lose a finger or grow a claw.
It's like AI.
It's
when
like
you do
AI.
AI, which just has 6 fingers and 4 hands.
It's like that. Just because that's just, we're working intelligently with the parameters of the dreaming mind. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in a dream teaching someone lucid dreaming, having no idea I'm in a dream. So okay, this is how you lucid dream, and here's how you do a state check. You put your hand out, you flip it, and then my hand completely changes. And I'm like, wow, what a dream.
Wow.
And so we can use these kinds of scaffolding practices during the day, mindfulness, lucidity, awareness, and you can check what state you're in. And if you do that enough times during the day, you just start doing it in your dreams. And then you start getting yourself lucid in your dreams.
If you just become aware of the fact that you're in your waking state during the day, you think that would help you become more lucid at night?
100%. And lucidity is both ways. Even by doing this during the waking state, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm now more confident that I'm in waking state.
But do you have to remember to do it when you're dreaming?
Well, remembering, yes, right? It needs to become a habit of practice so that when you're in the dream, you're doing it naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So,
because here's my thing, and so I want to troubleshoot this for me, and then I'm interested of how Ziva meditators could introduce this state check or something else as they're transitioning to prepare them.
Yeah,
because I feel like there's some ripe things that is uniquely valuable to this audience. But for me personally, even I'm meditating for 16 years and I see all these studies of you've given your body this rest that's 5 times deeper than sleep. So your relationship with sleep changes. You actually don't need to go into that deep state anymore, that you're actually sort of awake and asleep all the time. Because the brain scans of meditators who have been doing it for a long time are very different than non-meditators, because you're inserting that rest during the day, so the body actually doesn't need that same type of depth of rest at night. So there is a simultaneity that's happening even in the sleep state. I do not remember my dreams. I just go to sleep at night. I'm like, good night. And it's like 11 p.m. And then next thing I know, I like wake up and it's 7 in the morning. And it's like, goodbye, good night, nothing. And that's been kind of my whole life. Like a randomly, rarely, maybe I can count on one hand.
Are you trying to remember your dreams?
Nope.
No. I mean, listen, most clients who start with me learn about lucid dreaming and they're like, that sounds important and cool. I don't even remember my dreams, but I want to try. Reactivating your dream recall is one of the easiest parts of this practice. It's the thing I start with everybody because building a relationship with your dreaming mind is the foundation of lucid dreaming, right? So going to the basics, really beginning to open that relationship because you are dreaming every night. You just don't have a habit of recall. I mean, your mind has to take in so much stimulus all the time. If you have trained yourself to be like, dreams aren't that important to me, your brain's like, gotcha. I'll just make sure I filter that stuff out. It's not going to bring it to you unless it's like, that was a strong dream or that was a unique emotional experience. It's like going to pop you into memory. But one of the ways we start with people is literally just through what we call like the proximate karma. So using the dream recall induction. So as you're falling asleep saying, tonight I remember my dreams. Tonight I remember my dreams. Tonight, I remember my dreams tonight. If you go up to the bathroom in the middle of the night, just seeing if you can go, where was I? Kind of as you're going to the bathroom, kind of see if you can recollect a feeling of where you were. As you drop back to sleep, again, I remember my dreams. And then first thing in the morning, you just stay still, you don't move, and you just give yourself a minute to go, where was I? What have I been feeling? Who was I with? And allowing the dreams to start to gently come back to you and finding those threads, and then keeping a dream journal. So people start writing them down, and by setting an intention at night, and by first thing in the morning, turning the mind back to the dreamscape, where was I? I want to remember my dreams. Very quickly, the brain goes, okay, cool. So dreams are important now. We're writing them down in the morning, we're thinking about them at night, and you start to re-access all of your dreams.
And about how long does that period take before you can be like integrating your money shadow and
it's different for every single person. And like I love there's a beautiful analogy that Andrew always gives, which is it's like a pot of boiling water. Some people have a bigger pot with colder water, a bigger fire, less fire. The fire is what you have control over, your commitment, your practice. But we're working with decades of the habit of the mind. When I started training, I started getting lucid within 5 days. And I got super lucid because I was working at it and I had so much enthusiasm for it. For other people, I mean, Mingo Rinpoche, who is a master, when he first started these practices, he shares how he was in his 3-year retreat where all he's doing is meditating and practicing. 3 months of that was dedicated purely to dream yoga. He said for the first month, nothing. Like he couldn't get lucid. Like he was just, and that's full-time practice by a master. So there isn't like a money time guarantee, 30 days. You're working with the majesty and the complication of your own mind. And so for some people, it may take no time at all. For some people, it may take a little bit of time. And this is where the kind of the colonizing mind comes in, right? The conscious mind's like, I'm going to go into that dream. I'm going to get lucid. I'm going to extract some value. Like we can get really intense about trying to force our way into a dream. Dream yoga and lucid dreaming is about having and inviting a respectful, expansive relationship with this bigger part of our mind. And that's a big piece of this is like actually the humility of opening up from thinking you're just an ego. And approaching this with devotion and reverence and curiosity and awe and wonder and the magic and oh my God, it's actual magic in the dream. And the stronger that relationship is, the more naturally lucidity will come out. So I have students who come and they're like super dedicated, but they're like A-types who want to win. And the dreaming mind is like, no, baby. No, like it's like a lover. Like you got to woo me, take me to dinner. Like it's got a different mysterious feeling to it, which is so good for us, to learn that way. So good for me. I'm an A-type. It's good schooling,
Yeah, I love that. So Mia, I mean, you're so brilliant. You're clearly so passionate about this. I know you've been studying with masters. You've been a humble disciple to these lineages and these practices, and now you're doing studies on your mind and teaching people. I imagine there's going to be people who want to dive deeper into this and are curious of where they can start. And I think you just gave us some really good practices right now of setting the intention to remember my dreams before I fall asleep in the morning, being still, what did I dream, letting those little strands come back. and then writing down. Those are beautiful starting places. One thing that came to me while you were saying that is that for those folks listening who practice Ziva meditation, at the 2 minutes at the end, right? So it's mindfulness, meditation, and manifesting. But in the 2 minutes at the end, really the rule is keep your eyes closed, right? Like let go of the mantra and keep the eyes closed for 2 minutes. And oftentimes when people are in the course, they're like, Emily, I had this Pulitzer Prize winning idea, or like I thought of this amazing like name for my child. Can I write it down? And I'm like, no, that's called journaling. You're learning meditation. But what I invite them to do is make like a little 2-minute basket in their brain and put their Pulitzer Prize winning ideas in the basket. And then in the 2-minute safety stop, they can scan the meditation, be like, did I have any Pulitzer Prize winning ideas? And it feels like those people who are doing that, it feels like there could be something similar where you have like a dream basket or something, or that in the morning when you're in that in between, that you're like going back and scanning. Was there any dreams that want to be remembered?
Exactly. And I think that's a beautiful way of thinking about it, is just creating space and time to turn the mind back a little and allow what has been there to come up. Because if you jump out of bed and you run off to your day, you're not going to recall those dreams. It's just like if they popped right out of meditation and they ran off, they probably would lose those Pulitzer winning prize ideas. So, I mean, this is the cool thing, is like in meditation and in dream and in death, like we have all of these kind of nested parallel experiences of mind. If you're able to work skillfully in one, you can spread the butter of what you're doing there. And this, I have to say that it's really important to know that with the dream work, there are of course some really great skills and kind of practices that people have been using you can apply, but still a choose your own adventure. This is like you working with your own mind. I mean, every one of my clients, we have to make completely different adjustments because of how they're constituted. And so if someone's listening to this, they're like, like I know in my meditation practice, this really works for me. I wonder if I could apply that to dreaming. Like, just try. Like, be the scientist and the experimenter of your own mind. Dreaming is like an incubator where you get to play with these different forces of self, mind, and consciousness, and we can bring our own ideas to that, which is really exciting.
And just for safety's sake, is there anyone who should not practice lucid dreaming? Like, with breath work, it's like if you have glaucoma or you're pregnant, don't do it.
Yeah, I think with lucid dreaming, the only kind of caveat to this would be like if someone's having strong schizophrenic episodes or maybe strong kind of disassociations with reality, I think for safety's sake, it would make sense to work with other supportive practices first rather than something like lucid dreaming. But even in that case, like there's an amazing case of someone who has dissociative identity disorder, which you would not normally say practice lucid dreaming, who's been able to meet with and interact with their subparts in lucid dreams and have amazing healing experiences.
The reason why they're going dissociating to begin with.
Yeah, so I think it's like, I mean, I know for myself, I went through an 18-month period of having to uncover a lot of repressed memories. And I had a great psychotherapist using, MDMA and psilocybin for doing the trauma protocol with me over a period of time. Super helpful, was able to help me unlock just these compartmentalized memories I couldn't access any other way. And then in between those sessions, I was able to use lucid dreaming to integrate all of the newly released psychological content. So nightmares that I got stuck in an active PTSD cycle for 3 weeks, which was so intense. But because of the lucid dreaming, I was able to directly work with and integrate the nightmares. And it's actually amazing. Charlie Morley he was working with a series of researchers. They did a pilot study with 55 people, and they replicated it with a random control study with 100 people who have chronic PTSD. And they taught them over 6 days, 20-something hours of teaching, how to get lucid and how to work with nightmares in their lucid dreams. After that week, and then following 4 more weeks, 80% of those participants no longer qualified as having a PTSD diagnosis.
80%.
Because what happens, you have PTSD, is like you have this traumatic thing that's stuck, it can't process, it's like you have flashbacks, you're like, it gets stuck. In the lucid dream, you're now directly interacting with the representation of whatever the trauma is. You have conscious control, so you've got this a much greater sense of safety to embrace and accept and change what's happening, which then reprocesses and integrates the fear and the trauma completely differently, so it can process down and not have you have all these flashbacks and hypergenic fevers and stuff during the day.
Wow.
It's incredible stuff.
80% success. Amazing. All right, so Mia, if people want to work with you, if they want to learn more about this, where can they go? Where do they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run 2 programs. They're called the Lucid Dreaming for Lucid Living programs. I have an open entry track for people who want to get lucid or get lucid more. And then I have an advanced track for those who are already getting lucid once or twice a month. And both those programs I've built, they're 6-month programs designed to take us through different areas of our life, really using these practices not just for, like, oh, cool, dreaming, but really like how do we take that wisdom and move it into our waking state practices too. So those 2 programs, they're launching in April. But otherwise you can connect with me. I have a YouTube channel, the Lucid Dream Dojo, or on Instagram at Mia Lux. And I post a lot of free content there, a lot of free resources that you can use to just get dreaming tonight and have those first experiences of lucidity.
Oh, amazing. I feel like I could talk to you for 8 more hours. You're one of those brilliant, creative, funny, beautiful
Thank you for your incredible
humans.
questions.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I just want to swim in your mastery. And it's so fun to see you. I mean, you truly are. Like, you could have chosen any path and been amazing at it. But I really love this path for you, and I'm excited to see you bring it into the mainstream. And my prayer is that this episode like plants the seeds in the consciousness, and that we remember like just how vast our consciousness is and just how malleable it is, and that we do not have to be defined by our past. We do not have to be enslaved by this 3D reality or perception of it. And that your work and that this episode really helps to liberate people and help them to have more fun and more joy and more bliss in all of it, waking, sleeping, dreaming, all of it. Sweet friends, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation and this episode as much as I did. Please check out Mia at all the places. We'll put her links in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you learned something about yourself, about lucid dreaming, the best thing you can do is share it with someone. Share it with someone who feels stuck in reality, that could use some sort of a shift, some sort of a liberation. And the best way to support the show is leave a review, give us a 5-star rating. And also, if you want to learn more about Ziva and the practice that Mia was doing to prepare her for lucid dreaming, you can go to zivameditation.com. I love you, I love you, I love you. And I will see you next week on Why Isn't Everyone Doing This?